when I did come back the next day, because I lived in Long Beach, and I took my parents' car and went to the temple early in the morning. I had met Prabhupada's secretary, Shama Sundar, at that time. And he said, would you like to go up and see Srila Prabhupada? And that, of course, that was my intent. My intent was to challenge him. I had come to challenge him to see if he really is a guru. And the aspect I had thought about that morning, and I made 4 points. He has to be able to know the absolute truth. He has to be able to know the process of the absolute truth. He has to be able to read my mind, and he has to know what the future is, be able to predict the future. Now, why I came with those, who knows? But anyway, that's what I thought would give me the right answers. So I was coming in ready for, to challenge Prabhupada, and which is the Maya I was in. I was fighting with people. So I came in to challenge Srila Prabhupada, and they brought me in the room, and I sat in the back, was the only open space, and there was all these sannyasis there with dandas, which I hadn't seen before. And it was like a room full of sticks. And then there was like 2 people in white dhotis, which were Karandar and Jayatirtha. And then I was the only non-initiated devotee there with my long curling hair. And I was having difficulty sitting in a lotus position because I was too muscular built up. And then Prabhupada was just finished singing a song, and he was looking around the room and looked from side to side, and then he looked straight at me. And immediately he said, why are you a Kripana? And just boom, it was like, of course, I was thinking, I hadn't said anything now. What is a Kripana? And in my mind, and Prabhupada says, Kripana is opposite of Brahmana. And he started explaining how a Brahmana is the highest class in society. They're meant to know the absolute truth and be the mouth for God. And at that point, because he was so heavy, I remember Karandar and Jayatirtha and the sannyasis in the front sort of made a little aisle, so there was a direct contact for Prabhupada and me. And so I was looking at him thinking, what is this? I'm just being, screamed at of being miserly. It means miserly. And then Prabhupada explained, he said, if you have abilities, you have abilities. Since you're not using them for Krishna, then you're a miser. So we had never met before. And I came in challenging, and so Prabhupada took the first whap and stuck it to me. Then progressively, he started explaining the process of bhakti, the process that the absolute truth, what the absolute truth is the lotus feet of Krishna, and then he explained the process of bhakti, of rendering service. And so progressively, my 4 prerequisites for being a guru was becoming erased one after another. Simultaneously, I was being, kicked in the face by Prabhupada's, lotus mercy, by my nonsense challenging spirit. And finally, it was at the last point, and Prabhupada was, having his way with me. And I kept ruggedly insisting in my mind, well, he didn't say any, he didn't predict the future. So, and just as I was thinking like that, obviously, Prabhupada, you could tell he was seeing right through you. And you felt naked by his vision. And Prabhupada called for Pradyumna, and which was his traveling translator, secretaries for his translations. So he asked for Pradyumna to go bring him the big volume that he translates from. This was a 10 commentary volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has all the major commentaries of the Vaishnavacharyas. So at that time, in the early 70s, he had not read from the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam before. So Prabhupada then asked him, he turned it, get the book. When Pradyumna gave it to him, he turned to the 12th canto and he started predicting the future for the age of Kali. And he started saying, and he looked at me and he said, people will think they're beautiful by having long hairs. And I had this long hair. And he started explaining many of the different predictions in the age of Kali, and I felt so defeated. I hadn't even opened my mouth. I hadn't even, thank God, by Krishna's grace, I hadn't made any offenses other than offensively coming into him. And that was the very first time Prabhupada smashed me. And at that, immediately after the darshan over, I just bulleted out of the room. I mean, didn't see anybody, but ran down the stairs, jumped in the car, and started driving back home to Long Beach. And I was thinking, well, I've been called a miser, and I'm thinking all these different things. And then I'm going over all the stuff that Prabhupada said. And finally I reached home. I said, well, why don't you just face it? I'd just been defeated. And I wasn't used to being defeated, but then I remembered that this is what I was looking for, and here's an honest and regal and powerful guru, and I recognized I had been defeated. So it took a little bit of courage, and so I drove back the next morning, and I wrote a check out for $1,000, and I saw Karandar down in the gift shop, so I gave it to him, and so I made it out to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and he looked at it. At that time, $1,000 was like, a really big donation, and he said, "Oh, come, give it to Srila Prabhupada." And I said, "No, that's okay." I survived the first meeting, So he put it was, "Wait here." So he brought it up to Srila Prabhupada, and as he gave it to Srila Prabhupada, he had me waiting there, and he came back down, and he told Karandar to tell me that I have understood. So that was my first meeting with Srila Prabhupada. I remembered being so shaking, and Prabhupada called us up and gave us a name, and when he called us up, there was many devotees, and you're just trying to remember, not to screw up, how to say the right thing, and remember, and do it right, and so Prabhupada said, "Your name is Mahabuddhi," and then he gave some. Mahabuddhi means great intelligence. He started giving some thing out, but I was so awestruck, just like surrendering to Prabhupada, that I didn't even know what he said. I just became dumbfounded. Prabhupada was like that. Normally I have like what's somewhat of a Kshatriya mentality, and but in presence of Prabhupada, I was someone who could control me. On one of the morning walks that we were on, he gave Ganesham, now Bhakti Tirtha Swami, some personal instructions. And I thought that was so wonderful. And at the same time, I was a little transcendently jealous, because I wish I had some. So we went on the walk the next morning, and actually Prabhupada, I asked a question. I said, "Prabhupada, we're visiting all these professors and these big universities, and we were just a graduate from San Diego State, and we're trying to represent you well." I said, "Is there..." I didn't even quite finish the sentence, and he looked at me and he said, and I was feeling like, how can we, help be better qualified and help this? And Prabhupada looked at me, he says, "Krishna is already helping." So as if we thought we were doing the work. So Prabhupada was really good at bringing us back to reality. But then he said, anyway, he said, "You just pray to Krishna. Te sam satyuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mama payanti te." And then he goes, "You know what that means?" And I was kind of, and then he translated it, and he explained to those who constantly worship me, love, I give them the intelligence how to come back to me. So he said, "You will pray like that?" And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I said, "Every day?" "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." So he said, "In that way, Krishna will supply you the intelligence." So that was like one of the most wonderful times for me with Prabhupada, that he gave personal instruction, which we try to follow. That it's so, Prabhupada is such a wonderful personality that that one could dedicate his life fully to just simply trying to enact his desires. Yeah, there was one professor in Philadelphia that was cultivating, and then brought him to, and we thought, oh, he's teaching a temple, and he has all these students. He's an Indian, and so we're expecting Prabhupada, because we've seen Prabhupada, we've talked to a few professors, and he was cordial and nice. In LA, we used to sit in, and he'd talk to some of the professors in his garden, and so in this way, this was our business, meeting professors and every day, and preaching and trying to connect things to help get illicit reviews and get our books in libraries and colleges and be as textbooks all over the world. So this happened at this one place. They invited this Indian professor in, and we thought, he was the head professor on campus, and probably was going to be very nice. And so we got him in there, and Prabhupada just blasted him, just tore into him, blasted him, and called him cheater, and practically like annihilated on the in his darshan room, and And then the person left, and we were like all shocked because he was the big person on campus, but Prabhupada didn't care. If he was, as far as he's concerned, he was cheating the people. He was cheating his students and mocking like that. So we learned that actually those who were a little bit successful in the library party, we appreciated the service that we were doing, but we realized we were in one sense in the enemy's camp. They were Mahabuddhi, many of them, and their business was to downgrade and sort of make mythologicalize the teachings of Lord Krishna. And so our business was to engage them and to have them write reviews and use them for the sake of this of Krishna's goals, to solicit to be able to sponsor our books and get them in the universities and colleges, and that let the students get a chance to examine them. So it was a good training that Prabhupada, we didn't have that appreciation for the professors in the sense of like being attracted to what they were teaching is truthful. So in that sense, we were always in disguise as enemy agents in another camp. We had Ganesham or Bhakti Swami and I we had been in the Sankirtan newsletter a lot for all these book distribution that we had in all the colleges and universities. And I guess after like a few months of reading that, I came to the platform of impurity, like thinking, yes, we're the doer. And Prabhupada is coming to Chicago, and there were the Radha Damodar party, and he was installing so many deities. So there was about 300 devotees there. And many people, oh, Haribo Mahabuddhi, you've done so well. And then Prabhupada had come, and one day, each successive day that he was there, terrible things happened. Like one morning, there was on the installation of Guru Puj, there was a big Guru Puj, about 300 devotees, and myself and Ram Kali and I think Guru Kripa were dancing somewhat wildly, extremely wildly. I mean, if like anyone was in the way, they'd probably be knocked down. So Prabhupada stopped the Guru Puj, and he said, Mahabuddhi, what is this dancing? And he goes, that is not Vaishnava jazz. And then he turned to Brahmananda, and he said, show them, was it Kornatai style, or show them Sankirtan style, whatever. And he had Brahmananda do the Swami step. And then it was like you could hear a pin drop. The artik went back on, and I remember floating back all the way to like the 301st person. And successively, Prabhupada he had a big press conference, and I noticed there wasn't a book table up there for the books, and Prabhupada always wanted to do that. So he put I put books up there, but he just told all the devotees how all of his devotees pay obeisance before they came in. And so when I came in, it was a little late because I just finished setting the thing up, and everybody was all over the place, so I didn't want to make a disturbance, so I just thought I'd slide to the back. And then Prabhupada saw me, and he went just like this, and then turned to Harikesh, and he said words that Harikesh this day wouldn't tell me. But anyways, he severely chastised me because he just told all of his disciples to bow down and pay obeisances, and then I thought it would be kind of awkward for all the camera and stuff like that for him, and I didn't do it. So I was getting smashed one thing after another. We came in the room, and he was having a personal association. It was going all through the library party, man, and he was going, this is Gokulananda, and he's talking about Krishna, and this is Ganesham, talking about Krishna, and then Satsrupa, this is Mahabuddhi, and he just looked at me and next. And so I felt like after 3 days of that, I had committed so many offenses that I was ready to go jump in the Chicago River. And when I finally got to that platform, feeling useless and that we're not the doer of any of our services, then at that point, then Prabhupada again allowed us to have his association. So Prabhupada would teach in many ways. So in the greatest feeling one could have, and many book distributors I'm sure could say that at that time, is you could feel being the instrument of Prabhupada's desire. And once you have that feeling that you actually could do, you were useful in Prabhupada's service, then there's nothing more satisfying or higher. But it was just like Krishna who would manifest with the gopis and then unmanifest if there was any sense of pride or feeling that, we've done something, you become unqualified for the association. Such a pure soul. So he's teaching us lessons, not that we are not the doer. This was the mercy of Prabhupada. He used to run Prabhupada's darshans in Vrindavan and Mayapur during the festivals for about 4 or 5 years, up until his leaving in 1977. So one year in Vrindavan, Prabhupada, you'd have to let all the devotees and different people up to a certain point, and you'd have to stop the different devotees from coming in. And Prabhupada would always give such wonderful darshan. Sometimes you could just see Prabhupada, just his mercy reaching out to so many people. It was just, you could cut the air, it was so thick, and you just want to cry. And that's just, so if you go to so many darshans all the time, just seeing that is that you're seeing the great wonder that Prabhupada had over people, had over devotees and visitors. So one day we were in Vrindavan, and a gentleman came, an Indian gentleman in the back. I really didn't pay attention because it was all full room. And Prabhupada said, we're getting toward the end of the darshan. And he goes, where's the prasadam? And that was my responsibility, to make sure everything was there. And I just realized there was no prasadam. Prabhupada had just told me earlier that or the day before, make sure every single person that comes to his darshan gets some prasadam. And he said, if there's not enough, then some of the devotees you cannot. But if there's enough, everyone should get prasadam. So he just looked at me, where's the prasadam? And I was like, so immediately I ran back into the back, and I went into the deity's pujari room and said, where is the sweets are supposed to be for Prabhupada's distribution? And he says, well, someone was sick and they didn't make them. And I, oh my God. So I was looking in there, and I said, and I went into the deity's room just before they were making an offering. And I said, what is that? There was this whole tray of Mahasweets that they were going to give to Radha and Krishna. And I thought, very quickly, and I took that tray. And as I took that tray, you need me to stop? As I took that tray, I brought it into, I put it on a transfer plate because I had it on the deity plate. And I brought it into Prabhupada. Now I was under a dilemma. How am I supposed to offer this? You can imagine, it was like in my neophyte mode. I'm trying to think, now I've got this prasadam. Am I supposed to bow down and offer the 3 prayers first? I was like in this dilemma. Prabhupada just looked at me, obviously like saw through me. He goes, who is this nut of a disciple? And he said, come here. So he called me here, and he said, open this plate I had. And he said, oh, I opened up, and he looked at it. Now just maybe. And so, and trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, Prabhupada saw my anxiety. He came and looked at it, and I realized just by offering it to the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada was so potent that that would be accepted for Krishna. After I took it from Krishna's plate. So then I distributed it to everyone. But someone in the back of the room had left without, I guess, first me giving it to it. And Prabhupada said, there is one man, he has left. You must give him this prasadam. You understand? You must give. And I'd never seen that before. So it was just a couple of seconds, so I took some prasadam when I expected to see the person just outside the door. But he wasn't there, so, oh my God, I thought so I kept going farther and farther toward the gate, still didn't see him, and finally went to the gate, and there he was at the gate. So just in a matter of seconds, he was up at the front, which I thought was very unusual. But then I had caught him, and I gave him this prasadam and said, my spiritual master wanted me to make sure that you had some prasad. Yes. And then he looked at me and his head was covered with a chadar, and he was very, very unusual features, very Indian, but very, very regal. And he said, your spiritual master is very kind. And it kind of caught me, and he went down the road. I guess I turned in, I went down the road, and he wasn't there anymore. So as I was going back to Prabhupada's, I was thinking, who are these personalities that, that come even in to take darshan of Prabhupada? We got to visit one time when his godbrothers came, and he was speaking in Bengali, and he asked us to bring down this book. In this book he had the reviews that we had gotten from the library party, and he was so proud reading the different reviews. He had me read some of the different reviews that to his godbrothers. He was so proud of that, and I read one from Ganesham Bhaktitirtha, and one of mine, and one from Oxford, and one from one of the schools we went to, and Prabhupada would say in English a bit, say that, how scholars and these books are being, accepted all the world, and his godbrothers were very much impressed, and I could see that beam of smile that was in Prabhupada, and that sort of instilled so much faith in me, how much important that Prabhupada really wanted this done, and that was for a whole year. It like kept us going. One time, as Prabhupada's guard there, we were Prabhupada had me doing something in his room, and Prabhupada, he asked me, "Where is Bhagavan?" I said, "I don't know, Srila Prabhupada." And he said, "Bring me Bhagavan." I said, "Right now?" He said, "Yes, bring me Bhagavan." And he was so firm, and he looked at me like, in such a look that, it was imperative that, above anything else, I better go get Bhagavan right now. So I ran all along the wall of Mayapur, down the different ages, and Bhagavan wasn't even in the grounds of the temple. And so now, I said, "Has anyone seen Bhagavan?" He said, "I think he went to the Ganga." So I remember I was thinking, well, I should go back and tell Prabhupada that if he wants me to go all the way to the Ganga. I said, and I just thought, it's very imperative Prabhupada, so my instruction was to get Bhagavan and bring him there. So I remember I ran all the way out the gates and all the way through the fields, all the way to the Ganga, and Bhagavan was giving a class at the time at the Ganga, and there was about 50 devotees there sitting and listening. And I remember coming up to him and I said, "Excuse me, I wasn't a bashful or in a bash. It was probably one something. I figured, well, I'm not going to be beat around the bush." And I said, "Harbo, please excuse me, but Srila Prabhupada wants to see you right now." I said, "Yeah, I'll go there, and so I'll finish here." I said, "I'm sorry, Prabhu, but Prabhupada wants to see you right now." And he looked at me like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm just coming." And then I got more emphatic. "You don't seem to understand. Prabhupada wants you right now. So get your stuff and let's go." I told him like that, and he had never seen such arrogance in a brahmachari. I think that's commanding him to go do this. But anyway, somehow I think he felt my purpose, and I practically grabbed him to come and get it. And when I was going there, he was a little bit slower coming through the gate, so I ran straight up to Prabhupada's thing, and Prabhupada was still in that pose. He was still looking as if he hadn't even broken his glance from when he told me before. And he looked at me, and then as soon as he came in, he was like waiting for the report. He said, "I have brought him Srila Prabhupada. He was at the Ganga," and he says, "Very good." And I was like, whew, a great weight coming up. So that one has to be. Prabhupada was unabashed in the sense that as a disciple, we have to follow his instructions. That's our very life and soul. We have no idea what Krishna consciousness is out. None of us understood about Krishna, who he was, or devotional service, or Sankirtan, or prasadam. None of these things. It wasn't except for Prabhupada who gave us that. And his instructions to us, disobeying or not following his instructions, meant we were nowhere. So even such a simple instruction that we have no meaning why or what did he want it for, but it was so emphatically said it that we better do it, and we better do it right and now. And there wasn't anything, I think, my mind was determined there wasn't anything Bhagavan to do. Literally, if I have to carry him there, then he was going to have to come see Prabhupada. There was another pastime where Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasan in Atlanta, and we were very close to him right there. And he was given a mridanga to play. Prabhupada was playing mridanga. Yes, when he asked the devotees, that song, Parama Karuna? And the devotees can learn, yes, Prabhupada. And he sang along. So Prabhupada started, he said this beat that no one knew. And I think only now Kardama Muni is the only one who can sing it like that Prabhupada did. And he would sing Parama Karuna, and then he said, and then you follow, and no one could follow. No one knew the words, no one everything. And then Prabhupada could sing like no one knew it. There was 100 devotees there, but no one knew it, So Prabhupada would sing through it, and then says, "Now you're ready to follow?" I said, "Yes." Everyone's ready to follow. I said, "Yeah, and so people were kind of ready to try to follow with it. And so Prabhupada, we were thinking he's ready to play, so Prabhupada sits up there and tells him to play the tape. And so Prabhupada's sitting on the Vyasasana and his tape's playing Parama Karuna. And that was like kind of a first for us because Prabhupada's there and he's playing his tape now. And I'm supposed to follow after the tape. And then at that point he said, "So is there any difference between my tape and he's saying?" So he let us know that, he's in his tape as much as he's, speaking to us personally. So we can take great solace that his tapes have been recorded for prosperity and austerity, saying that if we just listen to his tapes now, even 20 years later, that they're non-different than Prabhupada speaking at the time. So when he spoke Bhagavatam class or when he gave his darshans, he was speaking to millions of people through all different generations, so we get a chance to hear these things. So no other acharya in our system had such a great opportunity to speak to unlimited numbers of people for an unlimited period of time. Atlanta, one time when Prabhupada came to Atlanta, was in 1975. I think he arrived in February, just before March, the end of February. Prabhupada arrived he was just on his tour went to Mexico City, to Caracas, and as he said, to Miami, and then he went to Atlanta. And Atlanta, everyone converged at that time. The library party, the Radha Damodar, and everyone was coming from all over America to see Prabhupada in Atlanta. They were just installing Gaurnitais. And Prabhupada had came and he said, I visited all those places, and now I visited Atlanta, and I can see this temple is the best. And yeah, Prabhupada. And of course he said that everywhere he went. So Prabhupada would encourage everyone, but then he started speaking. He was standing in front of the Gaurnitai deities, which are very beautiful there. And he'd be looking at the deities, and he'd look at the deities like not as we would look at the deities, because he would see Gaurnitai, and we would, we obviously weren't pure enough to see. So he'd be looking at the deities and said, these two lords, Parama Karuna, are very, very merciful. Yeah, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Gaurnitai, and he's even more merciful than Lord Krishna. And Krishna is very merciful, but Lord Chaitanya, he is so merciful. And then Prabhupada went into ecstasy, and he choked up, and so please serve him very much, very nicely, thank you. And from that minute, anyone who was in the presence, it wasn't as if Prabhupada was seeing Gaurnitai. It wasn't like, these are deities there, and we're worshiping, we're trying, and we understand they're non-different. Prabhupada was seeing Gaurnitai, and he was so appreciative of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya that he went in ecstasy, and all of the disciples there at that time was, just stunned by the emotion Prabhupada felt for the Supreme Lord. I think the most wonderful thing for us with Prasadam point was the several times that Prabhupada would individually take some Prasadam and give it to us, and we took that as blessings, because you'd go a whole year or so just, and maybe Prabhupada would come visit America, and you get a chance to visit one place where Prabhupada would be at, and then again in India. But so you'd have to, whatever association that you'd have with Prabhupada, you'd have to cherish in your heart and remember it. And that was, that personal association was wonderful. But you'd also feel Prabhupada so strongly in your service that we would be knocking on doors and we wouldn't know what to say, and we'd just be praying to Krishna and Prabhupada, and then you'd feel Prabhupada's, strength through these. Somehow or other, these things were happening in most amazing situations, and that Prabhupada was there, so you would feel that spiritual life is real. The association and surrender to the spiritual master is real, is necessary. So those are very instructive feelings on Sankirtan. So I remember Prabhupada is not so much in the past. A lot of times we look at things as reminiscences of Prabhupada, but Prabhupada now in the present. he would say many times, I remember in Atlanta when he was offering Guru Pooch to his spiritual master, he would say when he first came to America that, he was trying to do this impossible, but he did not feel alone because his spiritual master was always there. So Prabhupada, although every devotee of every disciple of Prabhupada devastated, and Prabhupada left us, but Prabhupada left us physically, but his instructions are ever much present, and he's there even with us today if we take the time to want to follow those instructions. So Prabhupada in the present is also, he's not finished with his pastimes. And so we just hope that somehow either we can not commit so many offenses to all my God brothers, that we can be around somehow to help participate in those. Because Prabhupada wanted this planet to be changed, and he wanted this Varnashram to be implemented, and so many things that they're waiting to be done. They're already successful. It's just a question of being qualified enough to participate in them. And that's the thing. The devotee has to become qualified to take the mercy of a spiritual master by following his instructions and becoming very serious about implementing and serving the lotus feet of a spiritual master. Another time in Mayapur, another important instruction, it was just myself and Prabhupada in his room, and he had been just finishing, he was writing some things and on his desk, and I just given him some coconut water, his dab, and I was in there straightening some things up and sat down just by the door and chatted a little bit while Prabhupada was working in there. So then Prabhupada's sister Pisama came, and I had her wait at the door first, and I said, Prabhupada, your sister's here. Would you like to speak to us? Yes. Bring her in. So I opened the door to let Pisama in, and she came in and sat down, and they started speaking in Bengali. And so I got up to walk out the door, and I had a few things I thought I'd do before the rest of the people came for that evening. Just within a few minutes there, and Prabhupada looked at me and said, where are you going? I was just going outside. I said, no, come sit. So he had me sit down, and the conversation went on with his sister for about another 20 minutes, half hour. And I was thinking, I'm going to be chastised again. I've done so messed up again. And so I was just chanting, and I didn't know what was said. He was all Bengali. And then his sister finished, and she went out of the room, and Prabhupada turned to me. And there was no one else there. Prabhupada turned to me, and he said, a sannyasi is never alone in a room even with his mother or sister. And then he quoted that verse. Now, Prabhupada wasn't having to show anybody specifically like this, but yet that example was very instructive, that he hears Prabhupada and hears his sister, who's very old also, and it's his sister, but yet showing so much by the example. So, for all of our sannyasis out there, it's a wonderful verse. And showed Prabhupada was non-different. I mean, it wasn't that Prabhupada would say something and doing something else. In that way, he affected all of our hearts who were trying on the front of preaching, that our whole moments of appreciation, our movement was just a little time we got to spend with Prabhupada, and that he was pleased with what we're doing. But seeing his example, there was no dichotomy. There was no hypocrisy. Prabhupada was Prabhupada, and as he spoke and as he put in the books is so he lived his life. And that type of leader you can follow anywhere. Karuna Prachu